So the highest good is the best, most choice-worthy thing. It is the best thing that there is. And as we talked about previously, we know a little bit about it at this point. We know that it's final or complete. It's choice-worthy for its own sake and not for the sake of anything else. It is inherently or intrinsically valuable, and it's not valuable as a means to anything else. That's what makes it the highest good. And the project of the Nicomachean ethics is to determine, to figure out, to find out what the highest good actually and truly is. People might have all kinds of mistaken ideas about it. Indeed, Aristotle thinks people do, that many people are mistaken about what the highest good is. And what we want to do in the Nicomachean ethics, or what Aristotle wants to do in the Nicomachean ethics, is determine what it truly is so that we might achieve it in our own lives. If you have a mistaken view, even if it's a kind of implicit view, we'll talk about this in a second. If you have a mistaken implicit view of what the highest good is, if you take it, say, to be money, well, you are likely to go astray as you lead your life. You are unlikely to actually achieve or to achieve the actual highest good, the true highest good. Why? Because all your efforts are going to be aimed at something else, namely, in this case, money, right? Which is not, in fact, the highest good. And so what Aristotle is trying to do in the Nicomachean ethics is to determine what the true highest good is. And he actually thinks it's kind of easy to say what it is, at least in some general sense. We all more or less agree about what it is. The highest good is happiness. Look, happiness is desired just for its own sake. We don't want to be happy so that we can impress somebody else. Well, because why do you want to impress that other person? Well, to be happy. I mean, happy, it just doesn't even really make sense, right? To want to be happy for some other end. Happiness is just itself intrinsically, inherently valuable. And and a sign of this is that if someone were to ask you, let's say you were doing something and, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Kind of like we were talking about in the last video. And you go up and up and up, and ultimately you bottom out in answers of, well, I'm doing all this so that I can be happy. And then someone were to ask you, well, why do you want to be happy? What do you mean, why do I want to be happy? The question almost doesn't make sense, because the question seems to be looking for kind of something above happiness on this chain. Why do you want to get a degree? To get a job. Why do you want to get a job? To get money, right? When we ask those questions, well, why do you want X? What we're looking for, what we're asking for, is something up above. But happiness, it doesn't really make sense to ask that question. Why do you want to be happy? What do you mean, why do I want to be happy? I just want to be happy, right? That's a sign that it's choice-worthy, it's for its own sake and not for the sake of anything else. The highest good is happiness. And Aristotle thinks this is kind of uncontroversial. Everybody more or less agrees that happiness is the highest good. So why doesn't he just end the book there? Why does he, we're still near the beginning of the first chapter of the Nicomachean Ethics, and there's 10 chapters of this thing. We haven't even read 10% of it. So what's the rest of the book concerned with? Well, he thinks it's very difficult to say what exactly happiness is. That's the hard thing. Determining the nature of happiness. That's what the rest of the Nicomachean Ethics does. So as an initial answer, what is the highest good? An initial answer to the question that Aristotle is concerned with in the Nicomachean Ethics, we get this, and it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. The highest good is happiness. Yeah? Now, what we're going to consider in this video are wrong answers to the question of what happiness is. Because now the question of the Nicomachean Ethics changes. Instead of looking for what the highest good is, I mean, we're still doing that, but instead of putting it in those terms, what we're now looking for is, what is happiness? And before Aristotle gives his own answer, his own account of what happiness is, he's going to eliminate the false answers, the incorrect answers, the popular answers that are incorrect. And so we're going to consider those in this video. It's going to be the main thing we consider. But before we do that, I want to talk very quickly about this word happiness. As you might imagine, that's not the word Aristotle actually used. Happiness is an English word. English wasn't even a language when Aristotle was writing, not even close. Would have been nothing like English at that time. So that's not the word he used, right? He used a Greek word, and the Greek word he used is eudaimonia. I'm not going to expect you to know how to spell that or pronounce it or anything. I mention this because it's important for our understanding of what exactly Aristotle is up to. Happiness is a translation of the Greek word eudaimonia, and it's a pretty universal translation. This is how that Greek word is translated pretty much across the board, not just in Aristotle, but in Plato and in every other work from the ancient Greek world where that word appears. Happiness is the standard translation of this word eudaimonia, but that translation is unfortunately somewhat misleading. There isn't really that great of an English translation for this Greek word eudaimonia. And the word happiness can actually get in the way of really understanding what Aristotle is up to. And so what I want to talk about very briefly is the difference between this English concept, happiness, and the Greek concept, eudaimonia. Because they're different. They mean different kinds of things. Yeah, happiness is an okay translation, but it really misses something about the Greek word, and it can be misleading. Eudaimonia really is better thought of as something like flourishing or doing well, living well. And indeed, in certain places, Aristotle says this explicitly. Eudaimonia, it's like doing well, right? Or living well. He uses both those phrases. You might even think of it as something like living the good life. And so when he says happiness is the highest good, what he's really saying is that like doing well, living a good life, that's the highest good. Doing well, flourishing, human flourishing. That's another way that people try to talk about eudaimonia. Translation people have proposed. Human flourishing. That's what he's talking about. Doing well, living well. Well, okay. How is that different from the English concept happiness? Well, the English word, and so this is not the way Aristotle's used, right? But the English word happiness seems typically to refer to a feeling. You feel happy. And it's a feeling that comes and goes fairly easily, right? I felt when I woke up today, I felt happy. I was well rested and the sun was shining and the birds were chirping. But then I walked downstairs and I, accidentally kicked the leg of the dresser. And then I was unhappy. I was very unhappy. But then, I don't know, whatever. Some people came to my door with one of those big checks and I won $1 million and I was happy again, right? And you just kind of come and go, happy, unhappy, whatever, right? And it's a feeling. It's like a subjective feeling, a way that you feel. That's not eudaimonia. Eudaimonia does not necessarily refer to a feeling, right? And Aristotle's going to pick up on this point in some of his arguments here. Living a good life is not a matter, or doing well, living well is not just feeling a certain way. I mean, maybe it involves feeling a certain way for certain periods of time, but it's not just having positive feelings, feeling good about things or whatever, being happy in the English sense. And moreover, living a good life, doing well, eudaimonia, flourishing as a human being, doesn't just come and go. right? It's not as though you can wake up flourishing, living the good life, and then all of a sudden you accidentally kick the dresser and, no, I'm living a bad life now. I'm not flourishing. I'm doing poorly, or what. No, that's not how it works. Eudaimonia seems to apply to one's life as a whole. And if you're living well, that's something you worked on for some time to achieve. And it's not the kind of thing that's just going to go away because you accidentally kick a dresser or the leg of the dresser or something. Right. So eudaimonia doesn't seem to be so fleeting. It doesn't come and go like that. It's not a feeling, right? Living well is not necessarily a feeling. And so when we read Aristotle and we see that word happiness, keep this in mind. I'm not going to talk about eudaimonia. I'm not going to use the Greek word. I'm just going to go back to using the English word. But keep in mind the differences here. Aristotle is not necessarily referring to a feeling. And in fact, he's not, what we're going to see eventually. He does not think of eudaimonia as just a matter of feeling good about things, having a positive feelings. That's not what happiness is. That would be a superficial account of eudaimonia, of living well, Aristotle thinks. There's more to life than merely feeling good. And indeed, he's going to think that if that's what you're aimed at, if you're aimed at making yourself feel good, happiness in the from what the English word means, if that's what you're aiming at, you're likely to be led astray. You're likely to not live as good a life as you otherwise might, right? Okay. So eudaimonia, think of it, or when you see that Greek, when you see the English word happiness in Aristotle, think more of living well, doing well, living a good life, and think less of feeling positive and good inside or whatever, right? That's the English concept. That's not really what Aristotle's getting at. Okay. So now let's turn to the question, which is what's going to really animate Aristotle for the rest of the first book, the Nicomachean Ethics, and really for the rest of the ethics as a whole. What exactly is happiness? And what we're going to turn to now are the wrong answers. So think of it like this. Before Aristotle gives his own answer as to what happiness is, which he does in Book 1, Chapter 7 in the Nicomachean Ethics, he's going to kind of clear the ground because lots of people have said things about happiness before. And indeed, lots of people have notions of what happiness is. And in Aristotle's view, a lot of these notions are incorrect. And so before I'm going to offer my own account, I'm going to show what's lacking in all the answers that you might give to this question. What is happiness? I'm going to show how the answers on offer, or that we might think of as obvious or true, are not true, are incorrect. Clearing the ground, creating a space then for his own account. Now, the way Aristotle starts is something like this. Most human beings, virtually all human beings, well, I'll put it this way, virtually no human being has ever sat down and mapped out their life with these for the sake of chains, trying to determine what the highest good is and what am I aiming at with all my choices. Virtually no human being has ever done that, aside from Aristotle and people maybe who read Aristotle. That's not a common thing to do. And most human beings don't ever really even sit down to explicitly think to themselves, or what am I aiming at with everything I'm doing? What do I take the highest good to be? That's just not a way human beings operate. They don't explicitly think this to themselves. At least most people don't. Nonetheless, Aristotle thinks that Aristotle thinks that we implicitly answer this question as we live our lives. And an outsider can look at somebody else's life, right? So somebody who's not the person in question can look at somebody else, look at the choices they make, and can determine what all those choices seem to be aimed at, right? You're acting in this way, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing that. All of those things, maybe you have to ask them a couple questions. Well, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? The choices we make, the way we live our lives, reveals what we take the highest good to be, even if we've never explicitly thought to ourselves what the highest good is. even if we've never explicitly answered that question. Nonetheless, your choices reveal what you take it implicitly to be. And so what Aristotle does, the first few kind of contenders for what is happiness that he considers are answers that many people, most people, seem to give to the question, even though they've never explicitly formulated the question and explicitly formulated the answer. If you look at how they live, this is what they're taking the answer to be. The first thing he considers is pleasure. And indeed, for Aristotle, this is something like, he uses pleasure in a rather extended, broad sense. He doesn't just mean, whatever, a massage or something like that. He means something like positive feelings. He means something like what we mean by happiness. If you look at how most people live their lives, Aristotle would say, look at what their choices seem to be aimed at, seems to be something like pleasure. Seems to be another way of getting at it, doing what you want, satisfying your desires. And you might think, well, yeah, that seems, what else could you want out of life? You want to get the job to get the money so you can kind of do what you want. And if you want to go live in a chateau in the Alps and whatever, drive a, I don't know what an expensive car is, a Ferrari in the Alps, doesn't seem like a good idea. But if that's what you want to do, get your money and you can do it and be happy. If you want to go live down on the sands of Oahu, I don't know, get some money and you can do that, right? That tends to be how we think about happiness. And so when Aristotle is considering this, what he's really considering is the answers that most people during his day would give to the question, what is happiness? But I think it's also the answer that most people today would give about what happiness is. Why do you go to school? To get the degree, to get the job, so you can do what you want, so you can be happy, right? Isn't that what happiness is? Just doing what you want, Aristotle thinks, no, it's not. Simply satisfying our desires like this, or doing what we want, getting positive feelings, feeling really good all the time, that's not what a good life necessarily consists in. That's not what makes a life good. And so if that's what we're aimed at, we're liable to be led astray. Now, he does not give much of an answer here, or much of an argument here in Book 1 of the Nicomachean Ethics as to why pleasure is not happiness. What he says is that the life of pleasure is, I don't even think he uses the word animals. I think he uses the word beasts, suitable for beasts. Well, I can't remember exactly what word he uses now that I think about it. But that's the idea. Okay, fine. I don't know. That seems a bit quick. I mean, he's basically just brushing it aside. He doesn't really engage with the answer. What he's suggesting here, and he fills this out later. We're not going to read it, so I'll just tell you very quickly. The idea here, when he develops it later, is not so dismissive as this makes it sound. Simply following our desires, that's what animals do. And if you want to say following your desires, pursuing pleasant feelings, pursuing pleasure, gratifying yourself, if you want to say that that's what happiness consists in, well, you're treating yourself as though you were a mere cow or whatever, a beast, a mere animal. But you're not, of course. You're a human being. And according to Aristotle, the central difference between human beings and mere beasts or other animals is that human beings have reason. And one of the things that reason allows us to do, according to Aristotle, is evaluate things in terms of good and bad. And it allows us to stand back from our desires, from our pleasures, and evaluate whether or not they are good or bad. Cows can't do that. They don't have the concepts good and bad. And they can't stand back from their desires in this way. They just give in to their desires. They just do them. We often talk about them just following instinct, that kind of thing. Human beings, by contrast, so think of it like this. Take food, right? You take a hungry dog, I don't know, or wolf or whatever, right? A hungry beast. And you put food that it would, put a steak, say it's a carnivore, right? And you put a steak out in front of it, it's going to go eat the steak. It's not going to stand, but it's just going to go eat it. It's going to follow instinct. By contrast, a human being, you can take a starving human being, a very hungry human being, and present them with the same thing. And a human being, and most human beings might go eat it or whatever, but not necessarily. A human being can stand back from their hunger, from that desire, and say no to it because they determine it to be bad. That would be a bad desire to fulfill. That's a bad desire, right? Maybe they're a vegetarian and they think eating meat is immoral. They're a vegetarian of that stripe, of that kind. And so they refrain from eating meat, even though they're very hungry. That's a bad desire. That's a bad pleasure, and I'm not going to give into it. I don't care if I'm really hungry. Or, right, human beings fast. I think today it's typically people fast either for reasons of health, right? So you might say, no, I'm not going to eat that. It'd be a bad desire. It'd be bad for my health. And so I'm going to, even though I want to, I'm not going to. Or people fast for religious reasons, right? All kinds of religions still do this kind of thing. So I'm not going to eat, not for matters of health, not because I find eating meat immoral, but because I'm denying myself as a kind of spiritual exercise, right? Human beings can do that. And to just give, to treat pleasure as our highest good, as happiness, is to ignore our rational capacities, those capacities that are distinctly human, that make us human. And as we're going to see later on when Aristotle gives his own account of happiness, living a good life, involves our distinctly rational human capacities. So something like that. Another way of condense it all, I was a bit long, sorry. Brief version of it. Pleasure can't be the highest good. There are bad pleasures. That'd be another way of getting at his point. Don't just do what you want all the time. Maybe you want bad things. That is an unfortunate fact about human beings and human nature. Sometimes we want bad things. And so satisfying those desires is not good, right? Satisfying these bad desires, not good. Pleasure can't be the highest good. Something like that is Aristotle's idea. Okay, fine. Not pleasure. What about wealth? You look around, you look at the kinds of choices people make. A lot of people seem to be aiming all of their choices at wealth, at accumulating wealth. And so a lot of people seem to implicitly take wealth to be the highest good, take wealth to be happiness. Aristotle thinks this is mistaken. And he gives an argument here. He gives more of an argument here, an argument that we can recognize. Recall what we know about the highest good so far. We know we know that the highest good is happiness, and what we're considering now is that happiness is wealth. Could that be true? Well, if we're going to say that happiness is wealth, what we're essentially saying is that happiness, or that what we're essentially saying is that wealth is the highest good. And we don't know very much about the highest good so far, but we know it's the highest good, and so it's got to be final. It has to be choice-worthy for its own sake and not for the sake of anything else. That's almost basically all we know about happiness and the highest good at this point. That's enough to realize that wealth can't be the highest good. Wealth can't be happiness. Because Wealth is not final. Wealth, indeed, according to Aristotle, is like the exact opposite of a final or complete good. A final good, a complete good, is one that is choice-worthy for its own sake and not for the sake of anything else. Money, by contrast, is not choice-worthy for its own sake. It's choice-worthy only for the sake of other things, right? So on both counts, it fails. Money in itself is just whatever, shiny chunks of metal that you can't do. They're not valuable in its own right. It's only valuable because you can go buy other things with it. It's valuable for what it gets you, right? It's choice-worthy for the things that it gets you. It's wealth is only good as a means for other things, for acquiring other things. And so people who take wealth to be the highest good are also mistaken, and they're likely to go astray as they make their choices, as they live their lives, right? As they make the major choices that they make in life, they're likely to be led astray to make bad choices. So wealth, that can't be the end that we pursue in life. That's not what happiness consists in, according to Aristotle. And so don't aim at simply gratifying your desires. Don't aim at simply doing what you want. Don't aim simply at money, at wealth. And with these two, you might think, well, geez, what are we to aim at then? Isn't that kind of what everybody today, one or both of those seems to be what everybody today takes happiness to be, right? They're all mistaken, according to Aristotle. Other answers that he considers. Maybe it's honor, and he considers this under the guise of the life of the politician. And this might seem a little bit less relevant to us. But really kind of what he's considering here is prestige, having a good reputation, being someone that people admire or look up to, being popular or famous, stuff like that. That's what he's considering here. And that has some relevance to us today. Many people, this is particularly true of academia, are motivated by prestige. They want to be prestigious. What really motivates them is not so much getting a mint of money or whatever, right? They want people to notice them. They want to be prestigious or something like that. That's what Aristotle is considering here. And in his view, during his time, that's kind of what politicians were into. And so, well, honor, prestige, politicians, the life of the politician, maybe that's a good life. And he's going to say, no. And the reason he gives here is a little complicated, but what he wants to say is that honor, these politicians who are all about honor and prestige or something, they only want honor as an assurance of their own virtue. The idea here is that the people who are really into honor, they don't take honor to be the highest good. And so it's not really a live contender. And so we can kind of move on from it. Honor is not going to be the highest good. No one actually even really thinks that, because the people who are really into honor, they don't even think of honor as the highest good. They take virtue, it seems, to be the highest good. So his politicians were doubtlessly different from the ones we have today, but that's another discussion. Another thing he mentions just very quickly. He says honor is dependent upon other people. For me to be honored, or for me to be famous or prestigious or whatever it might be, other people have to give me that honor. But doing well in life is not like that. Other people can't make me do well in life. Other people can't make me flourish as a human being. Not in this direct way that other people give me honors, at least. And so that's another sign, Aristotle thinks, that honor can't be the highest good. Well, okay, fine. Moving on. There's what I was just saying, right? Virtue is what the politician really seems to seek. The person who's really into honor, they're not really even into honor. They're into virtue. Well, so maybe virtue is the highest good. Maybe that's what happiness consists in. And this can get confusing because at the end of the day, once we find Aristotle's answer as to what happiness is, it's going to be related to virtue, but it is not just virtue. Aristotle thinks even this is wrong. Virtue is not what happiness consists in. And he gives an argument. The argument is something like this. Imagine someone with all the virtues, someone who is perfectly just, perfectly courageous, perfectly temperate, wise, everything else, all whatever virtues you have, and we'll get into the virtues later. Imagine someone has them all, right? Their character, they are perfectly virtuous. Yeah, I'm a really good person. Okay. So you have someone like that. But now imagine that they fall into a coma, or as Aristotle puts it, they fall asleep for their whole life. They're just asleep for their whole life now. Their character, right? So I don't know. Imagine a perfectly good person, and they get knocked out. They get whatever. I don't know. Piano falls on them or something. I don't know what happens. And now they're just in a coma for the rest of their lives. Yeah. They're still alive. And if they were to wake up, they would still have the same character, right? So they still have all the virtues. But they're not living a good life. They're hardly living a life at all. We wouldn't want to say that that person who is completely virtuous but in a coma is happy. We wouldn't want to say that they're flourishing as a human being. We wouldn't want to say that they're doing well, that they're living the good life. And so virtue, the mere possession of virtue, can't be the highest good. It can't be what happiness consists in. Because if it were the highest good, if happiness simply were virtue, then we would have to say that this good person who's in a coma is living the good life, is flourishing as a human being. But they're not, unfortunately, through no fault of their own. They're not living the good life. They're not happy. They're in a coma, right? And so it's not even virtue. The highest good is not even virtue. Virtue is going to be related to what the highest good is, to what happiness is, according to Aristotle. But happiness is not simply virtue. Those are the wrong answers Aristotle considers. And now he is going to put forward his own answer, his own account of what happiness is.